So one of the biggest questions that people have when they move to Japan is, how do I learn Japanese? And this doesn't necessarily go into people that only want to move to Japan, but also people who are just interested in learning Japanese because of the culture or anime, whatever the reason is. People just want to know, how do I learn this language? Because if we think about it, there's quite a lot to learn when you're learning Japanese because of all the kanji, hiragana, katakana, the grammar. There's just so much stuff to learn and memorize that it can be a little bit overwhelming. And for the video that we'll be checking out today, it's going to be explaining of how not to learn Japanese, because there's a bunch of videos out there on YouTube and guides and whatever of how to learn Japanese. People just want to know, what is the right way to learn Japanese? And the video we're going to be checking out today is going to be explained from a Japanese person. So maybe we're going to be able to learn the exact way of how to learn Japanese.
How not to learn Japanese. Number 1. Coming to Japan to teach English, hanging out with other English teachers after work, complaining how it's impossible to make friends with Japanese people because they don't go out of their way to adjust themselves to your communication style.
Alright, so right off the bat, I love how he mentioned this, because this is 100% true. A lot of people that come to Japan become an English teacher because that's pretty much the easiest way to get into Japan and the easiest job to get if you don't have any specialized skills, or if you work for a company in your home country and then you get the opportunity to come work here in Japan. And with 5 years living here in Japan and being in this same situation, I completely agree with what he's saying. I have no opportunities to use Japanese at all in my job. If I do, it's at the end of the day when there are no more students around and I can talk to my Japanese workers in Japanese. But even then, we always just kind of speak English because that's the environment we're set in. So if you come to Japan as an English teacher and you want to improve your Japanese, this is not the way to go about it.
Leaving Japan after 2 years of misery, which will make you feel bitter about Japan, so you start posting negative comments on YouTube videos about Japan, which you can't stop watching. People seem to have this idea that you need to come to Japan to learn Japanese, and if you do, you will automatically learn Japanese. But things don't work like that. That's as unrealistic as Power's plan to win the Nobel Prize. Even if you live in Japan, you still need to make an effort to learn Japanese, and you don't have to live in Japan to learn Japanese. And that's why I will teach you the kind of Japanese that real-life Japanese people today actually speak, because textbooks and apps don't really teach you everyday real-life Japanese. So click the link in the description and subscribe to my email group.
I like how he mentioned that you have to make an effort to learn Japanese even though you move to Japan, because just strictly speaking isn't the best way to learn Japanese, because you still have to learn how to read it and write it as well. A lot of the documents that are here in Japan are still strictly in Japanese. There's no English translations, so you're gonna have to read everything on the document in Japanese with kanji, and you're gonna have to write in Japanese as well. Some places do have translations, but usually important documents like tax stuff or visa stuff. I mean, the visa stuff, they've kind of slowly started to change, but there's still some Word Office papers that are only in Japanese. And if you ask them, oh, can I write it in English? They're going to give you the kind of stare. So you're going to have to learn how to write in Japanese as well.
Number 2. Watching anime with English subtitles. If you think I just said that you shouldn't watch anime to learn Japanese, that's not what I said. In fact, anime can be great resources to learn Japanese, and I've made a video about how you can learn Japanese from anime. The problem is, if you turn on English subtitles, you will just end up reading the subtitles, so you're not gonna learn a lot of Japanese. The solution is very simple. Turn on Japanese subtitles. This way, you are forced to understand Japanese. If you are a beginner, you can watch anime you've already watched, so that you don't have to be stressed about understanding the story. You can also stop the anime and look up words you don't understand. Another great thing to do is repeating characters' lines. It's a great way of practicing your pronunciation. Like this.
下着って確か土木関係の用語じゃなかったっけ？
お前は何でも知ってるな。
お前は何でも知ってるな。
I really love this anime.
Except that she doesn't know everything, she only knows what she knows. Number 3.
Okay, before we get into number 3, I absolutely love how we touched upon this subject because there are a lot of videos that I've seen on YouTube that people explain that you shouldn't watch anime to learn Japanese. And that's not exactly true because watching anime can be a great way to learn Japanese, just like how Yuta said in this video. This is actually the way that I immerse myself in the Japanese language when I'm at home. I don't necessarily sit there and watch the anime unless if it's my first time. If it's my first time, of course I sit and watch the entire thing. But if I'm watching a repeat, I just have it playing on the background while I'm doing something else, and I can still just hear the Japanese just being said in the anime. And that kind of helps me be in a more Japanese environment. But I will say that one of the downsides of learning Japanese from anime is I've heard from some of my Japanese friends that the Japanese that they use in some of the animes aren't exactly natural. Some of the words and phrases are referred to as anime boy, which means kind of just like anime phrases. And some of them are like old grammar stuff that they use in the past, or they just don't fit in with the natural speaking sense. So those are the kind of things you have to be careful with when you're learning Japanese from anime. And one of the other reasons why this is a very good idea is one of my Japanese friends that is pretty much native level English. He learned English by just watching YouTube. He would watch English speakers on YouTube and he would do the exact same thing that is being said in this video. And even though he went to America for 1 year to study abroad, his English has a very British accent to it because he watched a lot of British people on YouTube. So that really helped him improve in his English speaking skills.
Asking questions to random strangers on the internet, including native speakers. Because everybody knows that random strangers on the internet are credible sources and they know exactly what they're talking about. I see people ask questions about Japanese in my comment sections and some friendly strangers answer them. I know they have good intentions, but the problem is a lot of these answers are simply wrong, even though they sound convincing. Of course, there are good answers, but if you are not fluent in Japanese already, how would you know if the answer is right? You wouldn't. And native speakers of Japanese are not any better because they don't really know how to explain their language. When I hire Japanese teachers for my online courses, I always ask them to explain some basic concepts, and a surprising number of them get them wrong. So don't trust random strangers on the internet because they are as credible as Hayao Miyazaki saying that he will stop making anime. Number 4. Studying for JLPT. My video wouldn't be complete if I didn't make a...
I mean, that's kind of true, but you can also learn from experience from other people as well. I wouldn't necessarily go out and say that you should ignore everything that people say. I mean, if you're asking someone how to use a specific grammar or something like that to a random stranger on the internet, then I would say maybe you got to be a little bit careful because you don't know if that person actually knows what they're talking about. But if, for example, you're asking somebody about ideas of how to learn Japanese and that kind of stuff, I think that's still okay to ask other people because you could possibly learn a very good study method from a stranger on the internet. So I would say that in that kind of sense, it would be okay to ask a random stranger on the internet. But if you're looking for an answers to like a grammar question, I would either ask an actual Japanese native speaker or just learn that on your own.
Provocative statement like this. But let me explain. One of the biggest problems with JLPT is word frequency. Ask yourself this question. Why are you learning Japanese? Are you learning Japanese so that you can understand and communicate with real-life Japanese people? Or maybe you're learning Japanese so that you can watch anime without subtitles. If that's the case, a most logical thing to do is learning words, expressions, and grammar rules that are most frequently used in real life and fiction. And then after that, you can learn less common words and expressions. But JLPT is not structured like that. They often ignore the most common words and expressions and teach you much less common ones. This applies especially to lower levels such as N5 and N4. N3 and up are much better. Some people argue that foreigners only need to know formal and polite expressions to express themselves, but they forget that communication is a two-way process. It's not like you're the only one who speaks and other people just listen to you. You will still have to understand what other Japanese people say because otherwise, how are you supposed to understand your Japanese anime waifu or husband? So you have to learn words and expressions that we real-life Japanese people use, even though you might not use them immediately on your next trip because you have too much social anxiety to talk to people. The most comprehensive way of learning Japanese is using real-life resources as soon as possible. But if you prioritize low-frequency words and expressions, it will take you unnecessarily longer before you can start using authentic materials. This is why many people go to a language school in Japan, but they can't understand real-life Japanese people after months or sometimes years. But here's the thing. You might think that I'm saying that you shouldn't take JLPT, but that's not what I said. Taking JLPT is fine. What I'm saying is, over-optimizing your learning for JLPT isn't efficient if your goal is to understand real-life Japanese or fiction in Japanese.
Alright, this is very true. But I do have one thing to say about the JLPT test because I actually took the JLPT test and passed it. I only passed the beginner level and 4. But the reason why I took the JLPT test is not because I wanted to understand my anime waifus and all that kind of stuff. It's because I wanted to try to find a Japanese job in Japan, which a lot of jobs actually require you to pass at least the JLPT 3 or 2 to be able to apply to their company because they want people who can speak native level because they want people who can speak native level Japanese and have some kind of proof to back that claim up as well. So if you're wanting to come to Japan and work for a Japanese company, you will have to take the JLPT test or have some kind of proof that you are at that level that they're looking for. But the easiest way is to actually just take the JLPT test. And I may make a video kind of going over a little bit more in detail about what the test is and what things have in it, because I actually think that the JLPT test is a little bit kind of flawed in a sense as well. But just like it was said in this video, if you're just wanting to learn Japanese just to talk to people out of the streets and to watch anime, you don't need the JLPT test at all whatsoever. It's just kind of like a bragging rights thing if you just want to take the test and pass it, or if you're trying to get a Japanese job in Japan.
5. Not using authentic materials. And by authentic materials, I mean things that are made for native speakers. So they can be YouTube videos in Japanese, family-friendly anime, TV shows, films, radio shows, songs, video games, books, manga, etc. I have the impression that many people are kind of afraid of using authentic materials because they think that understanding authentic materials can be as difficult as beating Takagi-san. So many people keep using textbooks and apps, which will certainly help, but they are completely incomplete because they only cover a tiny portion of the language. And they completely ignore words and expressions that we very often use in real life. Sooner or later, you will have to use authentic materials, and the sooner, the better. But that doesn't mean you have to watch the entire One Piece without subtitles even if you don't understand anything, because if you don't understand anything, you're not learning much. What you can do is make them easy to understand by looking up words and reading grammar explanations. This is a great way of learning because you have the context where words are used. I explained how to do this in another video, so you should watch it. But the point is, you should always use authentic materials regardless of your choice of instructional materials, including mine where I teach you the kind of Japanese that real-life Japanese people today actually speak, because textbooks and apps are outdated and unnatural. So click the link and subscribe to my email group, Japanese with Yuta.
Very fantastic points in this video, and I actually want to go a little bit more into what he mentioned there in the final segment of his video. So I think using authentic materials like manga and light novels and all that kind of stuff is a really good way to learn more natural Japanese. But I understand as well that when you get that Japanese book and you open it up and you see all of that text there, your brain probably shuts down because that's what happens with mine all the time. I can read some kanji and I can already read hiragana, katakana, but still most of the books that I see are all strictly in kanji, and some of them do have some hiragana stuff, but then I come into the next problem, which is I don't know what the word means. I can read it, but I don't know what the word means. And that's actually something that I want to talk about that I'm surprised he didn't really mention in this video, but it's how you learn to read kanji. There are many different ways that you can learn kanji, like using flashcards and the most popular app like Anki, stuff like that. And from my experience, the best way that I learned kanji is just by writing it. I have a notebook where I wrote the kanji again and again and again, just repeatedly until it stuck in my head. And it took time, but I actually did remember it. And it also teach me how to write kanji the proper way, because on top of that, you also have to learn the correct stroke order of when you're writing kanji. As you can see, there are many different methods and ways to learn Japanese, and there's actually quite a lot that you do have to learn. But at the end of the day, you should only learn what you're aiming at. And I think what was mentioned in this video is the right way to go about it. If you're wanting to just learn Japanese just to talk to strangers, watch anime, then you shouldn't be focusing on all these other difficult things. Just try to memorize easy vocabulary by watching your anime again and again and again. But please like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and also don't forget to check out this video on its original channel. With that being said, I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.